High school can be tough, but what I experienced during my sophomore year was something straight out of a horror story. It began when the new kid, Alex, transferred to our school. From day one, there was something off about him. He was quiet, kept to himself, and had an eerie air of calm that was unsettling. My friends and I first noticed him during lunch. He sat alone, his eyes scanning the cafeteria, almost as if he was searching for something or someone. We didn't think much of it initially. New kids often take time to adjust. But as days turned into weeks, Alex remained a mystery. Curiosity eventually got the better of us, and we decided to learn more about him. We asked around, but no one seemed to know anything. It was as if he had appeared out of nowhere. This only fueled our intrigue. One day I decided to approach him. "Hey, I'm Jamie," I said, offering a friendly smile. "You're new here, right?" He looked up, his gaze piercing. "Yes," he replied simply, his voice devoid of emotion. Trying to make conversation, I asked where he was from and why he moved. His answers were vague, evasive even. The more I talked to him, the more I felt a chill run down my spine. There was something deeply unsettling about him, something in his eyes that seemed almost inhuman. Over the next few weeks, strange occurrences began to happen around school. Items went missing, unsettling graffiti appeared on the walls, and several pets in the neighborhood were found harmed. Whispers and rumors swirled among the students, and somehow Alex was always mentioned in hushed tones. Then, things took a terrifying turn. One of my friends, Sarah, confided in me that she felt like she was being watched. She would see Alex lurking in the corridors, always in her periphery. She was convinced he was following her. I wanted to dismiss her fears as paranoia, but deep down, I knew there was something sinister about Alex. The air around him felt charged, dangerous. I advised her to stay away from him, to be careful. The situation escalated during a school event. Sarah went to the restroom and never came back. We found her an hour later in the school basement, unconscious and terrified. She was mumbling incoherently about Alex, about how he had whispered things to her, things that made her blood run cold. We reported the incident to the school, but without any solid evidence, they couldn't take action. Alex was questioned but released. He claimed he was nowhere near the basement, and there were no cameras to prove otherwise. The incident shook us to the core. Sarah withdrew from school, and we were left to deal with the aftermath. The atmosphere became tense, the students wary and frightened. Alex, however, seemed unaffected, his presence at school as ominous as ever. I couldn't shake the feeling that we were all in danger, that Alex was not just a troubled kid, but something much worse. I started researching, digging into any information I could find about him. That's when I stumbled upon a chilling discovery. Alex had been at several schools before ours, and at each one, similar incidents had occurred. Unexplained events, students harmed, and Alex always at the center of it all, yet somehow untouchable. The realization hit me like a ton of bricks. Alex was dangerous, perhaps even deadly. I knew I had to do something, but what? Who would believe me? I decided to confront him. It was reckless, but I couldn't stand by and watch as things spiraled out of control. I found him after school, standing alone by the edge of the soccer field. "Why are you doing this?" I demanded, my voice shaking with fear and anger. "What are you?" His response was a cold, emotionless smile. "You wouldn't understand," he said. "This is just a game to me, and you're all my pawns." The way he looked at me with such malice and darkness in his eyes, I knew I was dealing with something beyond my comprehension. I backed away, my mind racing with terror. I had to warn the others, had to protect them from this monster. But before I could turn and run, he vanished. One moment he was there, and the next he was gone, as if he had never been there at all. I reported everything to the police, but without concrete evidence. They were skeptical. They promised to look into it, but I could see the disbelief in their eyes. Alex never returned to school after that day. It was as if he had vanished into thin air. The school tried to cover up the incidents, to move on, but for those of us who had experienced his terror, life would never be the same. I have two stories to share. I went to Bronx High School of Science for 3 years. I had some truancy issues, mainly due to pretty severe depression, but I still managed to get okay grades. They're pretty serious about good grades at that school, so the teachers kept putting me down, saying I was too stupid to get into college since I had a B- average. Sadly, I believed them, and this hit me pretty hard. My junior year, I ended up being hospitalized for 2 months due to the depression. When I got back to school, my parents and I were called into the principal's office. where the principal proceeded to ask why my grades haven't improved since I got out of the hospital, since in her words I thought you fixed him. She then looked at me and said that depression is an excuse for fat, lazy kids like you to get out of doing work. After that, she started yelling at my dad and said, "You're a horrible person for sending your child to such a prestigious school when he is obviously too stupid to do well." It all ended with her saying that if I was ever absent again for any reason, even if I had a doctor's note, she would discharge me as a dropout. Even though this was obviously illegal, I really did not want to stay at such a horrible school, so I transferred, but not before she deleted several credits from my transcript to make sure I'd have a hard time at another school. The second story is from my other high school. I had this one teacher who used to start shit with me because I dressed in all black. Not entirely goth, more metalhead. He would make fun of me, calling me Satan boy and claiming I drank blood and shit. One day I got jumped and robbed. I was going to the security office to get help. I run into this teacher. He starts to say, "Hey, Satan boy," and I stop him and tell him I've had a bad day. Please don't start this because I don't want to say something I'll regret. He then gets to the security office before me and tells the dean that I threatened to stab him and flashed a knife. Now, the way threats are handled in the NYC school system is it is an automatic expulsion following a partial hearing where you're not allowed to defend yourself. Until the hearing, you're pulled out of classes and sent to another school. I had the hearing, and I was kicked out of the school system, but luckily my dad found a lawyer who figured out that I was entitled to a bunch of shit under the Americans with Disabilities Act, and he just mentioned that law at a second hearing, and they reinstated me with no question. I was lucky that I'm legally disabled, or else my life would have been ruined by some asshole teacher with some sort of grudge against me. I had to stay an extra year because I missed all my finals and saw that teacher every day, but he never again said a word to me. Asshole was probably afraid of getting his ass sued. High school was supposed to be the best years of my life, or so I was told. But for me, it turned into a nightmare the day I started receiving those notes. It began innocuously enough. I opened my locker one morning to find a small piece of paper folded neatly. "I've been watching you," it read in a scrawled handwriting. I laughed it off, assuming it was a friend's idea of a joke. But as the days passed, the notes kept coming, each one more unsettling than the last. "I like the way you tie your hair," one said. "You look beautiful in your sleep last night," read another. My initial amusement turned to concern. These notes were detailed, personal, and they showed a level of observation that was deeply disturbing. I tried to dismiss it as a prank, but deep down, a seed of fear had been planted. I found myself constantly looking over my shoulder, wondering who among my classmates could be the author of those sinister messages. Then things escalated. I started noticing small items in my locker moved or missing. My textbooks would be out of order, and once my favorite pen was gone only to reappear days later. I confided in my best friend Lisa, who shared my alarm. "This is getting creepy," she said, her brows furrowed in worry. "Maybe you should report it to the school?" I considered it, but what would I say? That someone was leaving me notes. Without any evidence of who it was, I doubted I'd be taken seriously. The turning point came one dreary afternoon. I opened my locker to find a photograph of myself. It was taken from a distance, a candid shot of me walking home. The realization hit me like a punch to the gut. This person wasn't just observing me at school. They were following me outside of it too. Fear gripped me then. This wasn't a harmless crush or a prank. This was stalking. I reported it to the school administration the next day. They promised to look into it, but there was little they could do without any idea of who was behind it. The notes stopped for a while after that, and I hoped that maybe, just maybe, it was over. But it wasn't. It was a week later when I received the most chilling note of all. "I don't like being ignored," it read. "Meet me at the old gym tonight at 8 p.m., or the next note won't be just a note." I felt sick. The threat was clear and undeniable. I had to put an end to this. Against my better judgment, I decided to go to confront this person and demand they leave me alone. I didn't tell anyone, not wanting to involve them in what I foolishly believed I could handle alone. The old gym was on the far side of the school, a relic that was rarely used. As I approached it that night, the silence was oppressive. My heart pounded in my chest, each step feeling heavier than the last. I reached the gym doors and hesitated. This was foolish. I knew it. But I had to end this. Taking a deep breath, I pushed the door open. The gym was shrouded in darkness, the only light filtering in from the moonlit windows. "Hello," I called out, my voice echoing in the vast space. There was a movement in the shadows, and then he stepped out into the moonlight. It was a boy from my class, someone I barely knew, his face twisted in an unsettling smile. "Why are you doing this?" I demanded, trying to sound braver than I felt. "Because you're special," he said, his voice eerily calm. "And now we can finally be together?" I felt a chill run down my spine. His eyes were intense, his gaze unblinking. This was not the face of a harmless admirer. This was someone unhinged, dangerous. I backed away slowly, realizing I needed to get out, but as I turned to leave, he lunged forward, grabbing my arm. Panic surged through me. I struggled, my mind racing. With a burst of adrenaline, I managed to break free and ran. I could hear him behind me, his footsteps echoing in the gym. I burst through the doors and into the night, running without direction, fueled by sheer terror. I didn't stop until I reached a busy street, collapsing under a streetlight, gasping for breath. The police were called and the boy was found still lurking near the gym. He was taken away, but the damage was done. The sense of safety I once felt at school was shattered. Those halls, once familiar, now held a sense of danger, a reminder of the terror I experienced. I transferred schools shortly after, needing to escape the memories that haunted me, but the fear lingered, a constant shadow following me.